4K at 120 frames per second, 10-bit 422 video, 5-axis in-body stabilization. Is this deja vu or? Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. It's your boy Lemmy Focus Photography. Super excited to have you back in yet another video. If you're new to the channel, my name is Lemmy and I post photography and filmmaking content, creative content on a weekly basis. Please consider subscribing and join this family. But for now, let us talk about the crazy camera that is the Sony Fx3. As of the time I'm filming this video, the Sony Fx3 is about 3 or 4 or 5 days old. I do not even know when I'm going to post it, but yeah, there have been a lot of things going out about this camera, a lot of talk going out about the camera, and it's time for me to make my, although insignificant but also very useful input about this camera. As always, if you watch my channel, watch my camera reviews, you know that I hardly talk about the specs of the camera, and so I will also be doing similar. So I won't be talking much about the specs. Instead, I will probably just put a B-roll or the image of the spec sheet on the screen for you right now. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get to the real talk. Why am I making this video? What do I have to say that is so important? Okay, I'll start off by talking about the things I think I really love about the Sony Fx3. All right, first off, I think the first thing I love about this camera is the intentionality. The people who created the camera were very intentional about making sure it was designed for filmmakers and cinematographers. So you can tell that Sony was directing this camera at somewhere. It was not just another camera thrown in the wild. It was not just trying to put cameras out there, because looking at it might look like Sony's just trying to put cameras out there, but there is some intentionality in the design and based on the spec sheet that you just saw on the screen. Secondly, as always, Sony never fails with their compact design. It looks like an A6600 on the outside, just, you know, maybe you put A6600 on steroids, that's what everybody has been saying. But yeah, it's just a little bulkier than the regular A66, A6400 shape that we are used to. But the compact design is fantastic. So that means that you can have a cinema camera in the size of a compact camera. Canon already did that, but we'll get to that conversation in another part of the video, like later in the video. But yeah, I love the compact design of the camera. It is fantastic. Sony never fails on that end. Still sticking to the design, I think I love that it is lightweight. I think it lays, I cannot remember the weight. I'll just place it on the screen, you know, right here, so you can see what it actually weighs. But yeah, it's also, most of the people who have talked about the camera have said that it's also a very lightweight camera, and being able to do cinematic stuff with lightweight is also very important, because not all of us are built like The Rock or John Cena. So yeah, that lightweight is also a very big feature for me looking at this camera. All right, other stuff I think I'm also impressed with is the features in general. Looking at dynamic range, autofocus, Sony is the god of autofocus. Like, we really have to give that to them. They never fail on the autofocus side of things. So yeah, things like autofocus, cinematic quality, what else? Yeah, dynamic range, like I said before, all those stuff are nailed on this camera. You really have absolutely nothing to worry about on that end. Also, I think I'm impressed with the fact that it's still a hybrid camera. They called it a Cineline camera. Yes, yeah, it is to an extent, but it also has capability of shooting with, you know, shooting photos, and I think that's also great. They while there's internationality in making this camera for filmmakers, it is also for filmmakers who would like to take photos every once in a while. So yeah, pretty great on that end. Also, the handle, it comes with a handle, and that's another thing that shows you, I think, the overall advantage of this camera is the fact that it is designed specifically for filmmakers and cinematographers. There's a handle that comes with the package, and that handle just makes filming low angles and stuff just, you know, a complete ball. And finally, I think what I think is the general stuff that I think anybody would like is the design, the ergonomics rather. Everything looks premium, everything looks intentionally placed. The positioning of buttons, there are a few lights that show when you start recording. Yeah, placements of buttons, all that stuff. As I said at the beginning, intentionally designed for filmmakers, all that stuff. Fantastic. Big ups on that end. All right. Now moving on to stuff I am not so impressed about. Of course, you know there will always be stuff I'm not impressed about. First off, it is too too similar to the A7S3.
That man's an imposter. That man is the imposter.
I don't know why they had to make it so similar to that camera. I mean, based on specs, actually, design-wise, there's a big difference. But I mean, there is virtually everything that you would do with an A7S3, you would be able to do with the Sony Fx3. And so I'm wondering why they had to do that. It's like the Sony A7S3 with a few other things and a few missing things. Yep, there's no EVF on this camera. That's the second point. That's the second thing I really do not like about the Sony Fx3. It doesn't have a viewfinder. Fine, you're designing this thing for filmmakers. I agree with you. Filmmakers do not always need a viewfinder, but you also have to keep in mind that people will still want to use it. If it has photo taking capabilities, people will still want to use it for that. And moving on to the next point, the LCD screen is not that great. I have to admit, if you're going to do a camera without an EVF, if you're going to call it a cinema camera and you're going to do without an EVF, please make the LCD something worth the while. All right. Next thing I don't like, I think for what it's worth, I think this camera should have been able to do 8K. If you're going to call it a cinema camera, you're going to call it innovation in cinematic, whatever, please give it 8K. I mean, Canon R5, I know we shouldn't just start comparing things just yet, but the Canon R5 does 8K without overheating, but yeah, whatever. This camera does not do 8K, and that's I have to say that it's quite disappointing, and I wish it could do 8K. Next, I think the fan on this camera is absolutely useless. I said it because everything it does, the Sony A7 III does, and the Sony A7 III does not have a fan. Unless you're going to be shooting 4K at 120p for 3 hours or 2 hours, you really don't need a fan on this camera. Moving on to other things, I think Sony is intentionally leaving out important features. If you watch my Sony Alpha A1 video linked somewhere up there, if you watch that video, you would see that I talked about how they intentionally left out a flip screen. Even though the camera is small, it's something people would immediately want to use for vlogging. They left out a flip screen. Now they brought out a cineline camera, and lo and behold, it has a flip screen but no EVF. So it looks like Sony is intentionally leaving out some features so that people can buy their cameras. And I think that is shady. Sony, that is shady. Finally, tying back to the first point of one of the things I don't like about the camera, tying back to that, this camera costs a few $100s more than the A7S3. Wow, Sony, wow. So they placed this camera about $400 to $500 more, and I'm wondering why. I'm honestly wondering why, because you know they're the same camera basically. So what's my conclusion? What do I have to say? Well, I know, like I said earlier in the video, I do not want us to start doing comparisons right now because you know camera has barely gotten to anybody's hand. Most of the pieces that are out are not for sale. They were sent to reviewers to review. So we probably shouldn't start comparing things. But what I think is that this camera costs about the same price with the R5, and the R5 does a lot more than it does. If they are putting things like ND filters, maybe some other stuff, I know the handle compensates for some of the cinematic stuff that you find on cinema cameras, and I know that it has a fan, and I know that it is compact design, and I know that, yeah, whatever. The Canon R5 costs about the same price, and honestly, if I had $5,000 to spend on a camera setup, I think I would probably just go for the R5 if I had an option. Like, still, honestly, Sony has not given me anything that would take the R5 out of my mind. So if by some miracle I lay my hands on $5,000, definitely going to go for that. But I still want to hear what you guys think. I still want to know what you guys think about the Sony Fx3. So let me know in the comment section below. Is it worth the upgrade? Do you think you want to upgrade? Personally, I do not think it is worth the upgrade. That extra $1,000 or $2,000 you spend buying some other camera that will do 4K and all that stuff for you. There are other companies that do great stuff at lower prices, and I do not think, if you have, for example, everybody's saying that, you know, A7S3 owners will be this and that, they will be annoyed, yeah, whatever. I personally think that if you have an A7S3, you should be happy with what you have. Not worth the upgrade. Well, we have come to the end of this video. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to hit the bell, subscribe to the channel, smash a like on the video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.